Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial on how to work with Revit Structure. So today I'm going to model up a steel portrait frame building. This is part one. I will be doing subsequent parts to take it on into the fabrication and general arrangement stage, but today I'm just going to focus on the modeling. So I'm going to start with Revit 2018.2 and I'm going to use the out-of-the-box structural template. I've clicked into level 1. I'm going to go application menu, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it to my desktop. I'm going to call it steel detail and I'm going to save over this project. So now that the project is saved, I'm going to go straight to my structure tab and let's put in a simple grid formation. So let's start with the vertical grids. So pop one in there. I'm going to put these 5 meters apart. I'm going to use the controls to do that. So something like that. I'm going to modify the temporary dimension on the last one. So 5 meter spacing, 5 meters, and then a 2.5. Now for the horizontal grid line. There, I'm going to double click that, change that to alphabetical, and then put in these at 4 meter spaces. So let's do something like that. And let's get that 4 meters to there, and that should put in that type of grid formation. So 1 to 4, A to D. I'm just going to tidy these up ever so slightly to there. Just make sure everything's nice and neat. I'm going to work on 1:50 in this scale as well. So that's what I have. Straight to my north elevation. I'm going to put in some extra levels to control the height. So again, I'm going to put a, let's say, a 3 meter level there, and then a subsequent one above that. Click this one and then just use the temporary dims to adjust the height again. Just like to tidy everything off so it's nice and clear again. I'm going to set that to 1:50 so we're clear on what we're working with. So back to level 1, let's put in some structural columns. So I'm going to go to my structure tab, click the column tool, and I'm going to control its height by up to level 3, and I'm going to set the type to be a 305/102. You can, if you wish, use the at grid intersection. Because I don't want it at every grid, I'm just going to put it in here, use my spacebar to rotate it round, and I'm going to position my columns as so. Select a quick window, quickly click copy, multiple is ticked, and then I just copy it into each subsequent location. A quick 3D view, turn off my analytical model. I'm going to go shaded fine level of detail, 1:50. So I've got my columns into position. So let's look at putting in the rafters. If we look at grid line, I'm going to use that as my reference plane. So click my north elevation. I'm going to go to set, and I'm going to set my grid as grid A. Then it's a simple case of going to beam, selecting the UB. I'm going to probably change it to maybe a 254. So I'm going to load in a different framing. So steel, British standard. I'm going to go to UB, and we're going to go with something a little bit smaller. So 254/102. And we will position that into position from there to there, and then from that column up to there. If we look at that in 3D, you'll see that we now have the rafters into position. If I click into level 4, you'll see there the rafters in position. We can also see them in level 3, and if I select there and there, do a copy again, multiple selected, and then I copy each of my rafters into position. You could also use array. You could also draw it up where we draw one portal frame and then copy that down again. Just depends on your individual process. So now I want to look at the tie beams. I want to tie in each of the columns. So again, I'm going to go to level 3. Select my beam tool, just confirm that the placement plane is indeed level 3. I'm going to go for something a little less small. So the UB 127. And I'm going to pop it from there to there, and then on this side I'm going to position it from here to here. And if we look in 3D, I've got the tie beams for the first set of the first bay of the portal frame. So now I want to look at putting the beams in on top to tie in between the rafters, but I want the tie beam aligned with the pitch of the roof. So I'm going to set my reference plane. I'm just going to pick a plane. I'm going to pick on top of the rafter. That just sets it, and if we actually use the show tool, you will see that the plane is now aligned with the top of the rafter. So I tick off show, go in, let's go to beam, again a 127, and if I pick 3D snapping on, I can snap from position to position, and if we have a look, you will see that the beam is now aligned with the rafter. Go to my north elevation. I'm just going to change it to a wireframe so I can see my tie beam. There it is. I'm going to select it. I'm going to move it down the rafter. So select it from the apex point, drag it down. You'll see you get the temporary dimension, and I'm going to put in the value 500. That will move it down. I'm going to select it, use the mirror tool along the grid line 2. We have a look in 3D, and you'll see that we now have these in position. So I'm going to go back to level 3. I'm going to, or sorry, level 4, where I will see all the beams. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Use the copy tool. I'm just going to copy it from the center point of the column to there, and then to there. So again, once again, we go back to 3D, and you'll see that I'm now starting to get the basics of the portal frame. I also want to add a little mezzanine floor section in, so I'm going to go to level 2 and position a mezzanine floor section in this area. So I'm going to go to beam, confirm that it is level 2 placement, 3D snapping off, and I select my 254 beam, and I draw a beam from here to here, and also from here to here. If we have a little look in 3D, you will see we now have these beams in position. So back on level 2, and I want to draw in an intersecting beam here. If we change this to a fine level of detail, you will see that the beams will then show. So again, I want to run a beam from the center here to here, and again from here to here. I'm then going to create a copy of this beam. I'm going to copy it from this point over. I'm just going to put a value in of 3.5, and I'm also going to do the same from this point, or I can just quickly just mirror it along that axis point. Again, I'm going to put some intermediate beams in for the platform. Again, change it to, let's say, 125 or 127, and draw from midpoint to midpoint, and the same from here to here, and then I can draw in between the two. So when we have a look at it, we've got 254 sections, and then the intermediate beams are the little 127s. So that takes me sort of to phase 1 completion of the basic frame. I'm just going to quickly hit save, and now we're going to go into phase 2, which is where we're going to look and add the structural connections. So this is a recent addition in the 2017 software. It allows you to add a structural connection to the software. So you select your component, go to structure, and you click connection. And if your connections are preloaded, they will show here with the connection symbol, and then you'll have a generic, and you change your instance type on the pull down, and once I select it, I can then choose the type of connection. Now it will localize to the type of component that you've picked. So because I've picked a column, it's giving me the type of joint associated with that one connection. So I go to base plate, and it will start to position. Now notice one thing to be aware of, that if you're on a medium or coarse detail, you will not see the connection. So it's only in fine. So once I select it, it will go to the ribbon, and you can modify its parameters. So a lot of the time when you put your connections in out of the box, they're not the greatest in terms of the catalog and setting up. So I tend to go in and just change and adjust as I need it. Base plate dimensions, I'm going to take off all projections equal, set projection 1 and 2 to 150, and then I'm going to set 3 and 4 to 250, and that will give me a more square base plate. And then I'm going to look at the anchors. You can see you can control the type, but I'm going to go to the anchor and hold, change this type to a more standard. I'm just going to go with the standard holding down bolt. I'm going to say they're 24, and then you can choose whether you want stiffeners, leveling plates, all these type of things in. You can put in washers if you wish, click them on, they will then show, but for this I'm going to go with a pretty much standard base plate. If we go to level 1, again we change it to a fine level of detail, you will see that the connection now starts to show, and then I can copy that into position. So there's 1 and 2. If I select this, again and this one, and then we can copy it based upon the grid lines into position. We have a look at 3D, and we're now starting to get a model with all the base plates. So on to the next connection. Let's look at the haunch between the column and the rafter structure. Again, you click the connection, the instance type, and then we select the type of connection that I want. So first I'm going to go with a sort of a knee frame bolted with haunch. So we select it, it will go in, and we just orbit that round slightly so we can have a better look at what's starting to form. Again, I'm not overly convinced with that, so I'm going to change it ever so slightly. The first thing I want to look at is the bolts, so let's have a look at the bolt. Again, they do come through with the not the correct type that I want, so I'm just going to go with an XOX section, change it to a 16mm pattern, and then what I want to do is no stiffeners, but what I do want to do under the general tab, I'm going to put a cap plate on. I'm going to say that it's a horizontal cap, and I'm going to extend that above the rafter 75mm. What you'll start to see sometimes is that Revit just doesn't graphically update, but if we change it to coarse and then back to fine, you will see that it starts to update that connection. So if I select that connection, go to level 3, you'll see the connection is copied or is highlighted, and I'm just going to copy that into position here and here, and then with that in position I'm going to highlight it, select all instances visible in the view. That should select the 4, and then I should be able to mirror along the grid line, have a look in 3D, and we've now got, it does take a little while just to calculate and update, but we've now got the apex or the haunch connection in place. Next connection is the apex. Let's have a look at structure, connection. This one should be top of the list, so it's an apex haunch. Again, orbit that round. I'm not overly convinced by this one either, so I'm going to make some changes to it. First things first, I'm not requiring any stiffeners, so I'll take them off left and right. We have a look at just the general properties of the haunch, so you can see that we've got distances here for 1 and 2. I'm just going to change the height of 2 to 75, so that takes that back up to there. Then we look at the bolts, change them to XOX or a set. Let's go with an XOX 16 bolt group. So I'm going to change this to 3 and then 1, so I'm going to split it separately. So this one I'm going to say is then 75 below, and the distance in here is 85. And we come out, we have a look. So I've got my haunch detailed the way that I want it. I like to select it before I go to the view, so I've got it selected, then it's a copy, and I'm just going to copy it from position to each one, and then we have a look, and we're now getting the haunches into position. So once we get this in place, let's look at the tie beam. So again, it's column to the tie beam, structure, connection, and I probably want to go with a single-sided end plate. So we go to here, and again I'm going to modify the parameters of this. So straight to the plate and bolts, plate alignment, I want a 10mm plate. Let's put a 1mm gap in, bolts and holes again, let's go with an XOX. Keep it pretty consistent. Horizontal bolts, so I want to go with a total plate width of say 150 and the center distance of 75, so that will just change the position of the bolts. Then we go to vertical, we want 2, and we want to, let's do it from total from the middle, height of 150, and then we just need to adjust the distances of the bolts. So we'll do something like that. I might just move that down ever so slightly, so that's starting to look a little bit more consistent. Again, if we change to a coarse, then back to fine, we now start to get the connection that we want. So select the connection and go on level 3. You'll see it's there, and then I'm gonna copy it into position, and if we go here, we then need to go to our 3D view and again select it, and we will mirror it across. That will tick to there, and then we can copy it down in each position. So that will be the single sided one done. We then look at the, I probably shouldn't have put it in that position because that is going to be a double sided, and again the same principle. You can just select it into position. So let's look at this double sided. So it's the main column, then the two connecting beams, structure, connection, and we should have a double sided end plate with a safety bolt. And let's have a look at orbiting that round, modify. And again, the good thing is the windows are all dynamic between the model and the configuration. So again, the plate, let's say it's 10, 1mm gap, second plate is 10, and again that's a 1mm gap. Bolts and holes, well, let's go and set it to set. Let's go with an XOX actually. We go with a total plate width of 150, center distance of 75, vertical, then it just controls how we really want to set this. So if we set this to 0, you will see if we take off the safety bolt as well. So we can set our plate out from there, and if we go to vertical, so we've got these distances where if we just put a bolt in each group, or if we actually put 2 in this group and then put that to 0, we then just need to control how we set that out. So if we go total from the top, so you see we'll move the plate down, and if we set the layout distance to 35, and then we start to set the bolts out from that distance. Go from the center. It's just a matter of laying this out correct. So center, layout distance of 50, and that's starting to look okay. So if we set that to 35 maybe, that's a bit better. So let's go with something like that. Again, course, define. So again, I'm going to select that, go to level 3. I can copy that into position and then mirror it across, and then copy that into position. So if we have a look, we should now connect up all the tie beams. If we look at the tie beam at the on the rafter, so we go structure, connection, and we do something a little bit different in here. We don't have to go to single sided end plate. We could go with a shear plate. Again, I'm not really trying to engineer this as such. I'm just showing you the ability to put. So that will notch the tie beam. But if we look at the parameters of this, we just need to adjust the shear plate. So we've got a bolts, plate layout. Again, 10 mils okay. Shape is fine. Bolts and holes. Let's just go and set it to XOX, 16s, horizontal bolts. If we say there's 2, that we'll put 2 in here, and then we go to vertical, but then we just say there is 1. So we just orbit that round to look. You can see that's what we're starting to produce. So I'm pretty okay with that. That will do for this one. Again, I'm going to go to level 4 so I see my connection, and then I can mirror it across. And then I can just copy that from that position to here, and then again, once I've got that, I can then mirror it across the apex to there, and Revit will go off. It will automatically pick up the orientation and the direction of the beams, and I'm pretty happy with that. So the last sort of connections for the roof bit are the double-sided tie beams on the rafter. So again, I select this, structure, connection, and let's have a look. So we can put in the double-sided once I find it. So the double-sided with safety bolt, and the connection will come in. We modify its parameters. We have a look. First I'll go to the bolts, change that to an XOX. Let's go with a 16. Let's keep it pretty constant throughout. Horizontal bolts, so they centered. Let's go with a total projection of 150. 75 vertical bolts, and I'm just going to set it to 1. And we can say the layout distance. And set that to none, and then we can get, if we select this, we can then orbit based upon that. So just a simple connection there. We select it, go to level 4, and then I can mirror that into position, then copy from that point to here, and then I can mirror that across. That takes us in adding all the connections onto the roof. Then we start looking at the mezzanine section. So again, it's column to the beam here, structure, connection, and then it's setting out what we want. Let's go and look at a single-sided end plate. Modify the connection, and again, similar process. I like to go and set the bolts first. That will define how everything is controlled. 16s, horizontal. I'll go with a total projection, 75 spacing, 150 plate, and then it's just a matter of controlling the plate. I'm going to go total from a middle, 250, and that's starting to look pretty good already. So I'm going to select that again, go to my level 2. You'll see the connection. I'm going to mirror it along the axis there, and there. If we have a look, let's just put it into each position. I'm then going to select this one and this one, structure, connection. Again, same process. So we could go something a little bit different if we wish. So we could go with a moment end plate. We can go with a shear plate. So if we just orbit that round, we have a little look and see what's happening. And just modify. The only thing I need to adjust is the bolts, and probably just some of the spacings a little bit. So horizontal bolts looks pretty good. I might set that just to 75 just to give it a little bit of a chunkier plate. Vertical bolts is 3, but I'm going to say sort of set that to 65 between them. Possibly 60 just to give it a little bit more room for the plate. That looks pretty good. Again, level 2. There's the connection mirrored along that axis, and then mirror along that one, and then that one. So there's the plates now in position there. It's just a case then of tying up the intermediates. So this beam to this one, structure, connection. Let's see what we have. So we can go with a single end plate. So we have a look, you will see that it will notch top and bottom. Just need to adjust the size of the plate. So again, modify the parameters, plates and bolts, bolts and holes. Total width to 150, 75, just to show you a little bit more, and then vertically, I'm just going to say that the distance between them is 55, just to take it up, so that starts to look pretty good there. And then we go on level 2, so that is that in position. I can mirror that across there, then mirror it across there, and then again to there. So we have a look, that is them all starting to get connected, and then it's just the positions of these. So it's the 254 to the 127 structure. Again, same process. Probably go, instead of an end plate, I'll just put a shear plate in. Just have a look around and see what's starting to happen. Modify its parameters, bolts. Horizontal, I'll probably go 2, vertical 1. We just orbit that round, we have a look, that's starting to look pretty good. So with that connected, I can mirror that across to there, and then it's just these connections. So you can do these in plan, elevation, section, doesn't really matter. There's the connection. And again, the double-sided with safety bolt. Back to my 3D. The connection is still selected, so I can't just orbit it round to have a little look. Modify its parameters. Again, plates and bolts. Let's select what we need. Standard horizontal bolts. So I'm going to go with a total projection of 150 on the plate. 75 centers, vertical bolts, I'm going to set this to 1 only, and then the safety bolt is none. So that will get me that connection. Level 2, and we should be able to mirror that into position, and let's have a look at what we've got. So we've modelled up the portal frame, and I think I have all the connections added. And if we just have a look at it in a realistic view, you will see that we should have all the connections for all the frame. Just check each of our elevations to make sure. So I tend to just set them to fine, wireframe 1:50. You can see that we're now starting to see all the connections, everything in place. Just want to tidy this up a little bit. That's that. North again, everything's starting to come through. So fine. Wireframe, just a 50. And just a final check in 3D. So that concludes sort of part 1. Look out for part 2, where I take it on to the next level and start to produce the general arrangement drawings and the scheduling. So thank you very much for joining, and look out for part 2 coming soon.